So we've talked about the four marks of the church. The church is one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. Now let's move on to talk about the two sacraments of the church. Now, what is a sacrament? A sacrament is a ritual, I guess, that involves words and actions through which God seeks to accomplish something in someone's life. Now, the two sacraments of the church are baptism and the Lord's Supper. Baptism is the rite or the ritual of initiation. In some ways, baptism is kind of like marriage, right? A marriage ceremony is the ritual that formalizes a relationship with two people and is the initiates their married life. It doesn't initiate their relationship. They've had a relationship, before they get married. They have introduced one another. They've been friends. They've maybe dated, courted, using some old-fashioned words, but they've had some kind of pre-existing relationship. But the marriage ceremony formalizes that relationship, officializes, legitimizes in a public way that relationship. So that's what baptism is. Baptism legitimizes our relationship with Jesus. It formalizes it, it officializes it, it seals it. It's the public ceremony that says, Jesus and I are walking together. Now, there are a couple of approaches to baptism in the church. One is, and I think this is what many of us would be familiar with, most of us would be familiar with, most of us, this is what we've experienced ourselves, something called believer's baptism. So believer's baptism is the practice of only baptizing people who have made a public profession of faith. So we're not going to baptize anyone until they have reached some kind of age of accountability. They're old enough to understand what the faith is, and they're old enough to make a profession of faith for themselves. So we only baptize believers, those that have made a profession of faith. And then there are a whole range of churches that practice infant baptism. So this would include, obviously, the Roman Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, but also a whole range of Protestant churches. So infant baptism is not just a Catholic thing. Lutherans practice infant baptism. Presbyterians practice infant baptism. Many Methodists practice infant baptism. Anglicans practice infant baptism, and so on. So infant baptism is not just a Catholic thing. It's also a Protestant thing. So believers of infant baptism means that they will baptize children of Christian parents before they are believers, with the anticipation that they will be raised as members of the believing community. And so they are welcomed into the believing community as members of the believing community as infants, and then are raised up within the believing community. And most churches that practice infant baptism would make provision for a public confession of faith later on. And sometimes that's called confirmation, where the decision that was made for the child at their baptism, you will be a Christian, is then confirmed by that person once they reach an age of accountability. So both approaches value faith in Jesus Christ. It is sometimes mistakenly believed by those who practice believer's baptism that those who practice infant baptism think that infant baptism is kind of magic. So once you've been baptized, you're kind of in, whether you believe or you don't believe. And that would not be the case. So both approaches still value a public profession of faith and a personal faith. It's just that they come at where the baptism occurs comes in at a different time. So it's certainly appropriate for you to believe in one of these two positions over the other and to disagree with the other position. But I think it's helpful to understand the two positions, and that also then helps us to understand, where other Christians are coming from and why they do what they do.